All right, guys, welcome back to the Map Round Show. Thanks to the live audience for being here today. Are we all good? Cat, wolf. Okay, good. Yay for us. Okay, cool. So, welcome. You can see
Thank
to my
you.
left, much better looking than me. Juanita Vorster, how are you?
Good, thanks. And you?
Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thanks for inviting me.
I know. Thanks for being here. So where do you want? Today we're going to basically talk about a lot of stuff. It's all about difference and the role of difference in surviving the future in this world of change. What is the headline backstory that you want to share? How do you see yourself, and what do we need to land straight out the bat?
That's kind of like asking someone in an interview, tell me a little bit about yourself, or who are you? I think that's, for me, that's always been the hardest question to answer. And I've spent years and years and years trying to figure out, well, who am I? Until I stumbled a few years ago, I stumbled onto this quote that says, you are the unique combination of everything you've ever learned and ever experienced. So then I stopped trying to hang labels onto my own neck and trying to be one thing, a businesswoman or a professional speaker or a certified director or an ethics officer. All of these labels that I could hang on, but I started embracing the uniqueness. So if I had to give myself a label that won't make sense to anyone else, I am an opportunity enthusiast. I tend to get really enthusiastic about a lot of things, about a lot of opportunities. But then because of my training, because of my background, because of who I am, I filter them through, is this possible? Does this fit in with the vision, with the strategy, etc.? And then make conscious, nice, responsible decisions, not irresponsible decisions as you would think someone who is an opportunity enthusiast would. So
Cool.
I tend to live with my feet in both worlds at the same time. As long as it's extreme, I'm happy.
Cool. We're going to be talking a lot about extreme. So the other thing that's obviously interesting as well is that you're an entrepreneur, you're a speaker, you're obviously part of the Unique Speaker Bureau. You talk a lot about this concept called disruptology. Let's start there. What is it and why does that matter?
So when I started my speaking career, I wanted to speak about something that people were really struggling with and that they really wanted to figure out. And I found out that after 10 years of conferencing, we're still talking about disruption and innovation. And it puzzled me why we couldn't figure it out, why we haven't figured out this whole disruption thing and could just, move on to whatever is next. And then when I went into depth of it, I realized that there are so many reasons for it that I started understanding why we haven't moved on from the disruption conversation yet. And I said, well, what's the solution? The solution has to be somewhere, right? So I went through all of the ologies: psychology, neurobiology, sociology, changeology, all of the ologies. And there was no ology for change. It seemed as if no one from an academic point of view has studied change and formed an ology. So I formed an ology for disruption and I called it disruptology.
Yeah. So ology is the study of something.
There you go.
Yeah. Okay. See, I knew that.
There you go, we clever people.
How about that? Cool. So it's the study of disruption. So the thing for me is I think it's getting tired, as a concept. Like when you started speaking all those years ago, it was like, oh my God, how are we going to survive and the end of established business and what have you, and had all this kind of narrative and rhetoric. Things have moved on since then. And what's interesting for me when you talk things like change and disruption is it doesn't stop. It's not like, the disruption started on the 7th of May, 2015. And then it kind of stopped about December 24th last year, I think. Yeah, it was in the news, remember? It was the end of disruption.
Yes, with banners.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, lots of ad banners. So, but I mean, this is the interesting thing. It doesn't stop. And so I think we're all trying to get to grips with how does one...
But here's the problem, right? When I went into this and did this whole study, a non-academic study of disruptology or of disruption, where I started was, let's just study change. Let's figure out what change is. And what I found about change is not the problem. We're very used to cyclical change because if the sun comes up in the morning and it sets in the afternoon, that's change, right? Light changes, temperature changes. So change is not the problem. What we don't like is disruptive change. Now, disruptive change, very, very, very simply, is change that has changed by the time we got around to changing. So we've been dealing with change all wrong because change has changed. So use all of these traditional models and the usual way of dealing with change, trying to fight something and get over something and form strategies for something that has in its nature changed. So now suddenly the enemy, if we call change the enemy, has changed, but we're still using spears and shields and so on to try and fight it. So only once we understand what type of change we're dealing with, then can we start to say, how do we deal with it? But before we get with how we deal with it, we need to understand why we hate it so much.
Yeah, well, people love to talk about change, but they actually don't like changing. It's like, I was chatting to Justin Cohen about this and saying how people respond far better, individual people, you, me, and everyone else over there, studio audience. We respond individually to things we like. Okay. In the business space, it's different. It's like you respond to things because you have to change. There's no, in the sense of
true to some degree.
So it's, everything's debatable, right? But which is why we're here. But it's about this whole idea that if corporates don't change, they will die. Yeah. It's like the usual haunts, like Airbnb and Uber and Lyft, and the scooter company that started leaving scooters on the sidewalks of LA. On the beachfronts there, and now they're like $1 billion market cap company within 1 month. Like that's, and then what happened to everybody else, like in the transport space. So it doesn't stop. It's getting faster. It's becoming more hyper competitive. So if the business is motivated by profit and shareholders inevitably, then, hey, I'm not going to risk changing my business because I'm accountable to people who own my business. And as a CEO, there's no way I'm going to do that unless you literally give set up a separate fund, you put 10 bar into it, or 100 bar, billion bar in there, whatever the number is, and you literally go and build a separate business, because it's far easier to do that than it is just to incrementally try and change.
Absolutely.
It's like blockchain and financial services. You know what I mean? Like, you're not going to beat a blockchain thing.
But does that then mean that only new businesses can actually deal with disruption? Does that mean the old Fortune 500, the center of Sanson, etc., does that mean they're all going to die? No. It means that they need to do things differently, but it also doesn't mean that they need to do different, everyone, all departments, with all of the focus areas right now, right away. It does, however, mean that they need to figure out how much percentage of their focus and their measurement they're going to spend on building the new while continuing the existence. You also have to look at the stakeholders, for instance. So if you're dealing with 5 generations of people in the workforce, you're dealing with 5 generations or more people of stakeholders. So it's no use you saying, we're a bank, now we're all going blockchain, but there's a certain segment of your stakeholders that hasn't even downloaded the app. Never mind online banking. I know of people that still go and pay their bills at Checkers and Pick and Pay. So how do we now go, facial recognition and biometric scanning and apping and mobile first if we still have stakeholders that need our services on an offline basis? So it's okay for businesses to not make a huge flip just now, as long as they start somewhere with some percentage of business. And even if it's investing, 5% or 10% into your innovation fund, and you say, this might be a write-off. This is where we test things. This is where we go buy things. This is where we go implement things. And it might have no return on investment. And then there's the catch. So it might make sense for the business, but what about the board? Because the board oversees what the CEO and the rest of the ops does. But boards are usually manned and womaned by people that have lots of experience and not in the new things. So to convince them to think new and to set new strategies that allow for this innovation waste, if you want to call it, that's the difficult bit.
Yeah, that is hard. So when Jeff Bezos, when he founded Amazon, when he raised, I speak under correction here, but it was 20 or 60. I don't know, it was higher than 20. It was like 60 individual $100,000 investments. And I think he had, I don't know how many meetings he had, but this is like a documented thing about how he initially raised capital for Amazon. So they were only selling books. They weren't this monstrosity of a business that they are now. But what he said to them in his first letters to investors, he's like, we're not going to behave like a normal business. Like he says, if you invest with us, you must understand that we are going to play, and we're going to play a lot.
Yes.
And we're going to do these things that don't make sense. And we're going to do them because of the opportunity that, should we succeed, it will unlock for us as a business. And so it's top down. And that's why I'm saying, like, and again, it was part of the DNA from when they started.
The DNA. That's a big thing. But what if your founders, your board, your CEO do not have that DNA? Is that business then doomed?
Yes.
No, dude. No,
Yes.
There's always an opportunity. No, it's going to be harder.
They will break up. They will.
No, not always.
Hang on a
Surely
second.
you at the bottom have influence.
Bear Stearns, 2008.
Yeah.
A bank so big, it was deemed too big to fail, no longer in existence. It's like, it's inevitable as part of the economic system and fabric that businesses operate in. It's like Brett was talking about quantum computing and AI and all this stuff. I mean, it's like you're not going to be able to compete. And the only way that they compete is because they go out and they go and buy startups that have developed the IP and the tech. And then they bring it in and then they try and help it scale. And that's the thing, you know, and that's especially true here in South Africa, because as a startup, you've got B2B2C. So if you want scale, you go to Standard Bank, and this is what SnapScan did. And they went, hey, we've got this innovative mobile payments thing. And you snap the QR code thing and it takes like no time at all. And you can transact and you don't even need a bank account. How amazing is that? Sweet. They went to Standard Bank and they died. Because they could have become a South African unicorn. It was that good of an innovation. It was so simple, anybody could use. It was agnostic from a user perspective, and they're stuck in South Africa. So
I get what you're saying, but eternal naive optimist that I am, I refuse to believe that if you're a person that, for instance, studied accounting and suddenly you're working in this big firm in banking or something, now suddenly you're listening to the show and you're thinking, I'm done. You know, I just need to get out. I need to go and work for a startup. But surely you can have influence where you are in a big. Is it going to be hard? Absolutely. It's going to, most probably suck your soul before you get somewhere. But every single person at every single level has influence. Does that mean you're going to wake up and go to the board of Standard Bank and show them this video and tell them, I have influence, you should change? No. There's different ways of doing things, but I refuse to believe that big businesses are doomed to failure just because the ones that have been there the longest have the biggest say. Change is always possible.
it is. So obviously there's no they're all going to die for sure, but I would say most of them will. I mean, if you think about the Fortune 500 companies that were there 10 years ago and the ones that are there today, where are they? I mean, it's documented. This is a scientifically proven thing. If you want to know where the future's going, you look at the history and you say, okay, that's what happened back there. Take the financial system, gold in 5000 BC, and how the principles of money and how that's now evolved to currency, which is effectively worthless, and then you look at hyperinflation and blah, blah, blah in 2008, and suddenly you get to see the real picture of what's actually happening and where true value sits. And so going back to the point around big corporates, it's you're going to die. Right? You're going to die. Think about it.
Could we agree on the middle point? Okay. You're going to die if.
That's better.
Or you won't die if. And
That's
then
better.
we start discussing the solution rather than the inevitability. I always say when you discuss the future, don't discuss probability. Discuss possibility. So if we say, if you are big, then you will most probably, but maybe let's, instead of saying most probably because we look at the future or because we look at the past, say, what if? So instead of saying how do we or it's definitely going to, what if we? So any large corporate, any large business that know they're stuck in a rut, how do you know someone's going to get disrupted? An industry is ripe for disruption. It's really, really big. It's dominated by a few players and it's overregulated. Those are the industries. So if you're in that industry, if you own a business there or you work in a business there, what you can do now is not just break up and die. What if we did certain things differently? What if we considered, what if I as a person just started influencing my team? What if you as a mid-level manager started managing your team differently and communicating with senior management differently so that they can assess the risks, play a little bit, etc.? I think we wait a lot for the tone from the top. I'm not going to because the president should. I'm not going to because the government doesn't. That puts us in a victimized spot, I think. And I would hate to be a victim my entire life. I have no power because surely I have some power. It might not be big. I might not be able to change the world, but where I am with what I have, I can make a tiny difference. The whole was it the sea star analogy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was. So yeah, I guess again, but no one knows the truth. I just believe that we're going to see change that we've never seen ever.
Yes.
And at the scale and at the pace that we've
Yes.
never seen. And that's like, who knows? It's like, who really knows?
Absolutely. And it's going to be disastrous for many.
Dude, like, think about AI and like RPA and the automation of the robotic process automation.
Okay, yep.
So like, imagine what that's going to do to like a workforce. And again, think this is what's going to happen, right? The businesses, going back to what's going to probably happen, right? So AI, great. So now AI becomes truly adoptable, easily implementable. Businesses understand how to integrate that shit. The first thing a shareholder-driven business is going to do is they're going to integrate AI. Why? Because they want efficiency and they want to unlock more profits. And again, for the profit and greed is the single biggest issue in the world. Like,
Agree.
It's like you can't. It's like everywhere you look, it's like, oh, okay, the root cause of that is greed, or whatever the case is. So then they're going to go, well, what if we could automate our entire HR function? What if we could automate our entire sales function? We can get rid of that. I mean, have you seen that 2008 stock market floor, UBS Warburg, 10,000 traders in New York, all sitting on one floor?
Nope.
I've pulled this up in a talk I gave once, and then not even 7 years later, there's a handful of desks because AI runs the stock markets. There's no like, the broker's there and he's making, no, dude, because you can't crunch thousands of different data sources in real time like AI can. And if you're managing institutional like scale money, it's like you don't get to make mistakes, and traders make mistakes. And so now that entire trading floor is like 100 people from 10,000. So you've got 9,900 people who are sitting with no employment. It's like, that's the scenario.
I'm with you. It's one of the scenarios though, right? It's one of the scenarios. And it's the scenario we most often discuss. What about? And people want to know from you, what do you think about AI and job losses? And it's impossible for me to answer because my background isn't economy. My background isn't all of these things to go and investigate all of the complexity. But what I've figured out for myself so far is we've never known what the future jobs are going to be. Remember the people that walked in the streets and lit the lamps? You remember them? No, they're long gone.
Like,
the horse-drawn carriages, long gone. So when Henry Ford invented the automobile, did he know what type of jobs the horse-drawn carriage drivers were going to have? No. But they made it. Humans have been... We went from cave people with nothing to sending people to Mars. Surely we will be able to figure this out. And I think if we do keep half an eye on that, humans' ingenuity and humans' survival instincts and humans' creativity, I'd rather think about that and wait in anticipation, once again with naive optimism, to see what we will create, rather than saying, they're coming, and then either running away from the conversation or trying to regulate it so much that they never come, rather than say, the bots aren't here yet. AI isn't at that level yet. But when it is, I want to be in a position to tell it what to do. So if I can wrap my mind around what it can do and then say, well, my job consists of X, Y, and Z, my company consists of X, Y, and Z, I would love to outsource this chunk to the bots that have no feelings, that do not get tired. And what will I do with the time I have them? So once again, very philosophical, very naive, very optimistic. But what if we sat and, over philosophical conversations, or said, what would I want the bots to do? What would I actually want to do? Instead of, driving in Sandton traffic with all of the lights being out and going to work every day and spending 9+ hours for 5 days a week, just wishing for the weekend to come, what would I rather want to do with my life? Yes, and then it goes into, but we need money, etc., etc. And then the clever guys actually say, but with the robots, there's going to be a minimum living wage, blah, 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 all of those things that get really complicated. If you think simplistically and think, what if they come? What would I want them to do? Then suddenly we become the designers of the future rather than the, slaves of the robots in the future. You can either go very utopian or very dystopian.
Yeah.
You tend to lean towards the dystopian view, yes?
I guess so.
Me more of the utopian.
Label me, baby.
I read a quote, I think it was last week. The conversation of AI is roughly split into two parts, dystopian view and utopian view. And I don't think there's enough facts and enough experience that we can have a realistic view yet, because we don't know. The dystopian guys wants to know exactly what's going to happen, what it's going to look like, what the new sectors are going to be, what are we going to call them, what are the skills. They kind of want to start recruiting for it. But AI isn't even here. Machine learning isn't even here to that level where we have to worry about it.
Yeah, until it's too late.
Oh my goodness, let's start now. So what are the skills we can do? What are the skills we can have, and how can we change our mindsets to get to a place where we never in a space where it says it's too late now? I think that's what we need to develop, not being better than the robots, but figuring out how we're going to be more human, what we want from them. Machines are created by humans.
I'm going to come back to that.
Yes.
Let's do quote of the day. Take us through this one. You don't have to be extreme to be extraordinary. I'm extreme, obviously.
I'm not. I'm extraordinary, but I'm not extreme. And I struggled with this. A lot. Why? What? You want to label me again? So I always thought it's once again a part of this professional speaker journey. You know, people that are motivational speakers and professional speakers, with all due respect, you know, usually have a physical disability, or they've overcome really big things in their life. And I was sitting, well, I've got a big mouth and strong opinions. So I want to do this. I want to be a speaker, but what on earth am I going to speak about? I don't have anything extreme in my life. I don't have a traumatic story. Thank God. I don't have a physical disability. Once again, thank God. But what do I speak about? And I was actually having a pedicure in Cape Town, while figuring this out. And I wanted to speak about how to live an extraordinary life. And I was thinking, well, extraordinary, extreme. Jeff Bezos, he's extreme, right? Elon Musk, he's extreme. Steve Jobs, all of these extreme people. And I was never extreme. I was just ordinary. And yet the feedback I was getting, and this is going to sound really arrogant, but the feedback I was consistently getting was, oh, you live such an extraordinary life. And then I started realizing that you have to split extreme and extraordinary. You can be really extreme and very ordinary in the same way. Or you can be really ordinary, and if you apply that ordinariness, you being ordinary, in just one different thing, you can become extraordinary. Simple example. It's ordinary to be polite and have manners, right?
Correct.
There you go. It's ordinary to shop and pay for something at a till, right?
Yep.
But in our society, it's become extraordinary to be polite with a person serving you at a till. So in being ordinary, just ordinary, not extreme, not, painting your hair purple or buying them a chocolate or, showering them with gifts and flowers, just having a quick little ordinary, polite interaction with that person because you had the courage to do something a little bit extraordinary. Suddenly for that person, that makes an extreme difference. Their day can go from absolute crap to, hey, someone cares. Extraordinary in a heartbeat without you being anything but yourself.
The little things, essentially.
The little things consistently applied.
Mm-hmm. Where does difference start to? Do you want to take a?
No, I'll just interrupt you and drink my coffee as we go along.
Just wait.
Where does difference start for me?
Where does difference start to come into this? Because that's kind of what you're saying, right? It's the premise of, well, you don't have to climb the 7 peaks of the world to
or
be
jump out of planes or stuff. And you can just be you. Different for me is a very difficult topic because different is in my DNA. When you look at my Myers-Briggs personality profile, etc., it all points to the difference. So for me, it's really easy to be different. But I also grew up in a family that didn't necessarily understand or say well done to difference. I mean, they loved me, but I was different, and friends and so on. So I was always the different one for some other reason. I couldn't understand, especially when I was growing up. I couldn't understand why people don't see it my way. Now I understand that's my role in business, etc. You can't have everybody. You have leaders, you have followers, you have thinkers, you have doers, you have people that run 50 miles an hour or 50 million miles an hour, and then you've got people that said, calm down, regulation, rules, structures, etc. And you need both. You need people that think different, and you need people that protects the nostalgia. So where different starts for me is in the small things. For instance, if I speak to my husband, sorry, honey, if I speak to my husband and he comes to me with a problem or way he sees things, he never gets a sympathetic ear from me. I'm never on his side. Yeah, these people should do this. I always go, but have you thought about it this way? So I think it's very irritating for him, but that's where different lies. Have you thought about what you do? Have you thought about, and it can get toxic and overanalyzing, but have you thought about every single thing you do?
Individually or as in terms of business?
It starts individually. It absolutely starts individually. So when you get into the office every morning, what is the first thing you do when you get into the office?
Make coffee.
Why?
Because I want the high of caffeine.
Why?
Because it makes me a high-performance beast mode.
Why do you need to be a high-performance beast mode entrepreneur?
Because we're building an empire.
Why?
Because it's global domination or die.
Why?
Because I want to colonize Mars. Fuck Elon Musk.
Why? Not the Mars bot. Not the Musk bot. Let's just not get the
I'll go all day.
There you go. But exactly, that's the thing. So for you, it was easy to answer because it's just ridiculous answers. But do you ask why? So why do you have a microphone? Why this? Why do we create content to send to people? Why do we have a live broadcast? And only when you know why you do certain things can you then go and say, but does it still make sense? And once you've figured out whether it makes sense or not, can you say, let's keep it. If it makes sense, let's keep it. It's fine, as long as it really makes sense. If it doesn't make sense, then start the difference. So, we need to discuss something as a group. Let's have a meeting. Why? Is a meeting the only way to do things? Can we chat about this over the phone, etc., etc.? So difference starts in asking ridiculous amounts of becoming 4-year-old and just interrogating everything you do until you get to the core purpose of why you do things, and then deciding, am I going to do it the same way or am I going to do X, Y, and Z little bits differently?
It's interesting because that kind of sounds like a parent-child dynamic in some ways. Do you know what I mean? Because like you grow up with one set of parents, and then you learn how, where they did things right, where they did things wrong. And then like my biggest fear is like, fucking hell, I'm going to make the same mistakes that my parents did. You know what I mean? And like that terrifies me to death.
But see, that already is the starting point. You have the self-awareness. Most people don't have the self-awareness, whether they're born with it or they've watched a lot of shows and podcasts and stuff and been made aware of it. The moment you are worried about these things, you're already doing better. It was Prof. Jonathan Jansen last year at a conference. And he was saying, how do you know you're a good parent? If your kids make better choices than you do. I'm like, yes, because they just never agree with anything I say. But the moment you worry about these things, am I doing the right thing? Have I made a choice? Is this how I want to? You're already doing different, and you're already being extraordinary because you're thinking about things. You're not just in sheep mode, just following the flock.
You got kids, right?
I do.
Yeah. So let's go back to our original point here, was that about change and adaptability and stuff, right? So the interesting thing for me, it's like, well, as a parent, then how does one like? So I hate the school system. Like I don't like. I think that
you have to give me a fist bump.
Oh, mate, ring the bell, dude. We have
What's
bells
the
for
bell
that. We have bells for that.
Why is the bell? Oh.
Yeah,
Why?
but like we'll so like. So I got a school report with his first one. I mean, he's only 4, fuck's sakes. And then he got to, and then the stuff they were teaching him was like, I was like, what is this? I actually got like physically angry because when I saw it, I was like, I don't want him exposed to this like ridiculous way of thinking. It's like, and the rules and the structure and all this stuff. And it's like, bro, it doesn't belong anywhere, So it's like, and then I think, well, okay, so then in a few years he's going to go to another school. Why must he go there? Like, and in the context more broadly of like, how do you prepare your kids for the future? Like that is such a big deal right now, because as a parent, you come from a doctrine of an industrial age system, and it's been linear for as long as the world has fucking been in existence, and now it's like whoop, it's like exponentially doing things, and your children need to be prepared for that place.
But we're not prepared as parents, because we kind of dealing with this, my job, the robots, my this, and how do you prepare?
Get good grades at school.
Oh, please don't even. So on the whole school subject, I'm with you, and that's why I was in a fortunate position that my kids are now 6 and 7 years old. There you go, grade 1 and grade 2, and because I have such a thing against the traditional and the school system, etc., I started looking out for schools that thought a little bit differently. But then I also realized that they are going to live in a world of duality for the next 2 decades. So they're going to have to do traditional as well as different. So for me now, sending them to school that teaches only coding, that teaches only to have robot friends, and to ignore this whole milieu they're growing up in, they won't then be able to play with other friends or society. They won't be able to relate to people that doesn't have that background. So I'm going to have to send them to a school that takes some of the traditional, measures some of the different, and then I'm going to have to parent differently. So for instance, when you talk about measurement, whether it be measurement KPIs, etc., what do we measure? We measure achievement, right? We always measure achievement. We never measure learning. We don't have measurements for that. We don't know how to measure that. So what happens? You get the report card and you need to get 8. What was it, up to 7 or up to 10? I can't even remember. So I will go, there's an interesting, she seems to like maths. That's fabulous. Mommy doesn't like maths. And then there was a dip in something. So as long as I understand the reason behind, that's where she went wrong in this test, and that's where he's got a gap, etc., and check in with the teacher. Does the school have this? I really don't care about their marks. I'm very fortunate. I seem to have bred intelligent kids, which really, really helps. But for me, it's about, what do they learn from that? What do they learn from my reaction in that? Do I tell them really good marks, I'm going to give you an extra ice cream, so reward is connected to achievement? Or do I ask them, which part of the school year did you really like? Mommy, I liked art. I liked maths. Why did you like it? Okay, great. Same thing. Have you asked your kids, or how often do strangers ask your kids, what do you want to be one day when you grow up? Think about that question. What do you want to be? How do we answer that question usually? The job, right? What do you want to be? I want to be a fireman. The question was not what job did you want to do? It was asked what. So now suddenly our entire identities are being defined by what we do as we grow up, right? So when you ask someone in an interview or like this, who are you? You always start with what do you do for a living? So split the two. So my daughter wants to be a vet, and my son wants to be a werksman, a working man. As not a fancy engineer, I've tried, as in the guy that actually takes the bricks and build them. And then I realized one day I was on my way to go speak about disruption, in the workplace and the new jobs. And I realized I haven't prepared them properly for it. So we were having this conversation in the car going to primary school still. And Dean was asking Gabby, how should I build you one day when I'm a werksman? And Gabby was explaining it needs to be purple and pink and stickers on the windows and unicorns and heaven only knows what. She has no style whatsoever as long as it's got pink and glitter. And I told them, do you realize that you might not have those specific jobs? Do you realize that a robot might be picking up the bricks and building? So how would you feel if you were to be a robot workman? If you had to code the robots and train the robots how to build the houses? And he was very upset for about a week. Because I spoiled his dreams. Now at that stage, he was 5 years old.
Heavy. And
Gabby, the same thing. Do you realize that you might not have to take care of the pets anymore because surgical, robotic theaters, etc.? So I had to shift what they wanted to be. I have to shift their future now. And that's the first thing we need to do. What do we measure? And how do we create the pictures in their mind? How old are your kids, if you don't mind saying?
4 and 1.
Yeah, you see, also tiny. So with the 1-year-old, they have no picture in their mind yet of what, but the 4-year-old's most probably starting it, right? So in any conversation you have, what do you want to be one day? Are you talking about personal characteristics or are you talking about job?
Well, my kid wants to be a rock star.
Why? Have you asked him why?
Yeah, I just think he digs guitars and stuff.
Because, virtual artists are actually a thing, and virtual concerts, virtual reality concerts with holograms and so on, that's becoming a new thing, and distinguishing between real rock stars and created rock stars are in a bit of a disruption as well. So as long as you can know why he likes it and start developing those skills, send him to traditional school. That's absolutely fine. Let him have the traditional skills, but at home, let him understand there's a new way of thinking. You've heard about the 4 C's of the future, the 4 skills of the future, right?
Nope.
So very simply, the World Economic Forum brought us a whole list of things you should be able to do. I think a list of 20. I can never remember that, but I can remember 4 that I can do. So it's communication, collaboration, creativity, and critical thinking. So if we have kids, what do we do as parents? Not outsourcing it to the school, hey? Because schools aren't set up for this. Schools are set up for traditional industrial skills. What are we doing to teach our kids how to communicate properly? In conflict situations, in asking for what they want, in communicating with different generations, different races, different genders, etc. How are we teaching them to collaborate? Just share, just share, Or do you make a different plan? I always tell my kids, make a plan together. Stop bullying each other to get your way. Make a plan together. I need a third plan. I've got one plan and a second plan. If you don't have a third plan, you can't play. Collaborate. Creative thinking. I think there's so much, people or kids don't go outside anymore. They just do iPads and iPhones, etc., etc. That might actually be developing critical thinking skills if you download the right apps. But creativity, let them play, let them make a mess. How often do you go, oh no, you can't do that because you'll make a mess. But in that, we prevent them from developing this creativity skill that they actually need, that isn't present in schools anymore because the curriculum has changed so much. And then critical thinking. Do we allow our kids to develop critical thinking, or must they just listen to what we say?
Well, they got to do both, right?
But exactly, I think that is my biggest thing. People always want to choose sides. They want to serve a situation and then judge and then choose one. Where we are now, it's kind of a fence-sitting type of thing. You have to be able to do both. You have to be able to say, no, the robots shouldn't come. And yes, if they come, then let's design the future. You have to allow your kids to develop critical thinking where there's no risk to the parent-child relationship. But you also have to train them to sometimes just listen and accept and be disciplined and follow the rules. But we have to be able to do both.
Have you driven an autonomous car, or have you been in one?
I have not. My car has 200,000 Ks on it because I'm waiting for self-driving cars to come before I buy a new one.
Because that's for me is like an analogy for parenthood. Because in the world, at least it says as an example of it. So if I hate the school system, right? So, but I also don't have the answers. So you almost need it's like, you're either going to enforce a doctrine on a child and say, okay, based on these 4 C's, here's what we think, blah, 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 and you're going to base your parent strategy on that stuff. Mm-hmm. The other way to do it is just to go, okay, well, let the child decide. And what you do is you put in some fundamental principles in place.
Oh, yeah, I know that, yeah.
Not just go and do what you want, but some fundamental principles that he'll need, like, as you say, communication or, critical thinking.
The playing field,
the fundamentals.
Yeah.
But then you don't know what to prepare that child for.
Exactly.
So how do you know what I mean? Like it's almost like you're shooting with there's no target.
But there is a target. We're just looking at the wrong target. And I think that's my whole thing about the question of why. Why do you make coffee? Why? Why does your child want to be a rock star? Why do they want to be a vet? Why do they want to be a werksman? Why do they want to be these things? Because if you look at things very simplistically, and I think from an academic point of view, we've been taught to not think simplistically. And an engineering point of view, never make things too simplistic because then ignore the complexity. But the moment we think complexity, we get lost in the complexity. If we take a step back and say, simplistically, these are the core skills my child will need. And that gives them a very good foundation to then add on coding. So now we can say, we guess coding is a skill. That's a hard skill. What about the soft skills? So if coding becomes a technical skill, then this person will need to do critical thinking to analyze if this, then that, if this, make decisions. They will need creativity because they will need to see what they have before they code it. So base skills. So in those boundaries, in those setting the child free, what are those boundaries? What does it allow them to do and what does it prevent them from doing?
Exactly. So it's like that autonomous car example where the car has a set of fundamental rules in place and the car is going to get that child from A to B anyway. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
The driver will then decide, well, where is B exactly?
Yes, the route.
Yeah.
So A to B, that's a prerequisite, or that's a predetermined, but we don't know where B is. We know where A is. We don't know where B is. So we're trying to control B by planning this route. Stop planning, let go. And it's easy for me to say because I'm an naive, eternal optimist, but maybe we should move back from this addiction to perfection and addiction to success, and move our parameters a little bit more from achievement and to learning. Not just what did you achieve today, but what did you learn today?
Exactly.
So how frustrating is it, right, as an entrepreneur, when you sit at the end of a day, and your husband or your wife or your partner comes home and, oh, what did you do today? A thought. Hey, what can you show for it?
Yeah.
But that is where we need to move to. We're so frantically doing things and focusing on the tactical and getting all of these things right that we forget figuring out is actually part of it. I had a meeting with my team leader, my agency lead this morning. And we were talking about strategy and a focus on tactical and a conversation about technical. And she would often ask me things and I would refuse to answer. I would actually tell her, I'm not even going to have this conversation because it's the wrong conversation to have. Because it focuses like this. It focuses on what we know and it focuses on using past tools to kind of manage future issues that don't even exist yet. So what if you knew enough about the big picture? What if you knew enough about the vision and the strategy and what might be that guides your conversation? It's like going into a job interview, for instance. You would love to have all of the questions, right? So you can have all of the answers and prepare them because that makes you feel in control. But what happens in an interview, what they actually want is to see the real you, that authenticity. So if you know enough about yourself, then surely you can answer the questions in the interview. If you know enough about the strategy, enough about the market, enough about what you do as an entrepreneur, then you're in a good enough position to walk into any meeting at a moment's notice without doing super lots of prep and knowing exactly how it's going to go. And you'll have a sense of calm because then you trust that unique combination of things in you. You trust that you'll be able to create rather than pull from the stuff you've learned.
Yeah. It takes courage though, because you almost need to wipe clean or unlearn everything you've learned in your own doctrine of experiences. Like, I was going to school in the 80s, right? In the fucking 80s.
I think me too.
So like, imagine like what was going on in the 80s. There were shoulder pads and there was like,
I just want to say,
like
I have shoulder pads on, I don't.
It's like, and then you think about the world and what it's become today with social media and stuff like that. And then, but you're fundamentally like your values and the way that you think and so forth, like changes always, but it's fundamentally set in a certain path on towards a B, right? So you have to unlearn a lot of stuff in order to then learn new things.
You do. And here's where I take that courage and that strength from. So 10 years ago, what were you doing 10 years ago?
What year was that?
I have no idea. What year is it now? 2009.
I was...
You weren't
in
here,
America,
right?
No, I was in America. I was...
So 10 years ago, did you know exactly that today we were going to be here, there were going to be that many people in the room working on those programs, talking with all of this equipment with me? Did you know exactly that this was going to happen?
Totally.
Shut up, stop lying. Work with me here. But we don't, right?
I saw it and I made it happen.
10 years ago when you didn't know.
I didn't know shit. You never know. You never know.
But does that prevent us from moving on? No. So why are we now suddenly sitting here being a little bit older and a little bit more exposed to the bad stuff in the world? And now suddenly we are terrified of what we don't know. 10 years ago we weren't terrified. And even if we were, we're still here. So maybe we should stop worrying about knowing and start developing that courage. And do you know how you develop courage?
Go.
That's the thing you fake. Fake it till you make it. So people use just fake it till you make it. And what they imply is lying. Lying about skills you have until you learn the skills. That's unethical. Just don't touch it. What you need to fake is the courage to say, I don't know yet, but I am sure I can learn. I didn't know how this interview was going to go today. So I had a little bit of, eek, what am I going to say? Do I prepare? Do I not? Until I once again reminded myself of, I know stuff. The stuff might not be what you want to know, but surely I can make a plan. I have words. I have basic skills to pull from to make a plan. So let's rather rely on our ability to make a plan as we go than all trying to become futurists and predicting the future and just managing it to death.
I know. I love that, because that's actually the key point, because it's like you need IQ, EQ, and then you need like AQ, right? Which is this whole thing where you need to adapt quickly and learn things quickly. Agility. Yeah.
Okay.
I know. You know the whole singularity thing. So well done. Give it to me. Yes. But what you said is the key thing. It's like, I know for sure, like if ever I project into the future, then I get uncertain. Anxiety starts to come.
Anxiety kills creativity.
It's antithesis, dude.
Yeah.
You're 100% correct. And so it's like, and you know what? Out of 1,000 things that I would worry about, not today, but in the future, like, okay, AI, and like, how are we going to do that? And you just start you freak out, and you start like getting, it's people suffer from anxiety like way more than I think people really care to talk about, so, but it's like the only thing you can control is today. And of the 1,000 things that I worry about, 999 of those things never, ever happen.
Yeah, I agree.
Ever happen.
Do you know what the best antidote to anxiety is for me? It also starts with an A. I think in tweetable quotes. That's just something I do. Go. Authenticity. Yeah. Why are we anxious? We're anxious because we have the self-imposed expectation that we should know everything, right? We think that our teams and our audiences and our staff and our kids and our wives and our partners and our husbands, we think they expect of us to know everything. But what do we all actually just want from each other? I want you to be able to tell me, this freaks me out. I am anxious about it. And I want you to be able to, when I tell you I am anxious about something, to just say, it's okay. Let's talk about this. So we're all living in this made up expectation of perfection and trying to live up to it. But perfection doesn't even exist. So instead of being anxious about things that we are trying to control because we want to be perfect, because we want to be valued, let's just say, hang on, let me try something different. Let me try being authentic, within the boundaries. If you trust a person, if you trust a team and so on, let me be a little bit authentic. I think in especially large businesses, and especially those that have grown quickly, the leaders get put on a pedestal, whether we want to be or not, right? You get put on a pedestal. Oh, you're doing so well for yourself. Really? I am. My measurements, your measurements are different. But if leaders start stepping off that pedestal, that's when good things happen. So if you start stepping off that pedestal and come to your team and say, I am scared, what you think would happen is the team going, ha, I'm going to make money more than you because you are scared. What actually happens is they can come to you and say, we're scared as well. And then suddenly you move into a collaborative space, all on the same page, all saying we're scared of these things, we're anxious about this thing, worried about this, want to control this. Let's make a collaborative plan and share the load. We're too alone. See, alone, anxious, authenticity, all of the A's coming out.
Amazing. Lots of acronyms today. The 4 C's. How many A's are there? 3.
But the 4 C's aren't mine. That's the interwebs.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, the A's are mine.
Acronyms are great. Justin had his TTOPPS, TOPS framework.
You see, my problem with the acronyms and the things I make up, it sounds brilliant when I say it, and then someone will say, what you said last week on Facebook. I'm like, the what now? I said, what? And I always need to go back. It's the fly-by-nights. So what I do on my phone is if these things arise, I just jot them down. And 6 months later, I just go, what were you thinking about?
Let's talk about the Injustice League.
Yes.
Okay. What's the one injustice that you see in the world?
That stereotypes are used as a final judgment instead of a springboard. I mean, what did I say to you when I met you outside in reception?
Short.
You're short, right?
That's the first thing she said.
You're short.
She didn't even say, hi, Matt, how are you doing? Or nice to meet you. Just short.
So
it was like it just came out of her mouth.
No, I said you short. There was a you.
Oh, was there? Oh, that's even better.
So let's do. Hi, Matt.
Could have been it could have been
the
the pot plant behind me
exactly.
short, but it was not you short.
We've been WhatsApping for weeks, so we knew each other, right? Right.
Yeah.
But what if I were to think, right, Matt is short, he wears cargo pants, he's got a lot of brilliant ink. I need to discuss that and see that. Brilliant ink on his arm, so he cannot possibly have a business mind. He's got ink, he cannot have a business mind. What would have happened then? I would have underestimated this dude, right? Completely. So what if I was walking in here, dressed as I am, which is very corporate today, it tends to be very corporate because just had so look. What were the first opinions you formed when you saw me in reception? Be very honest, it's fine.
High class business executive.
Right, so I just told you my car that I drive has how many kilometers on it?
200,000.
Does that fit the picture you created?
Absolutely.
Liar, cargo pants on fire. But so what we do with all of these stereotypes, right, is we use them as final judgment and we say, this is your box, this is where I file you, and this is where you belong, and I never let you out. I still have people in my life that treat me the same as they treated me when I was 16, which is 20 years ago.
Who is that? Name and shame.
Shush, no. Old friends, right? So it's 20 years on. I'm an entirely different person. I actually like myself now. You know, the 16-year-old version wasn't that cool. I'm still not cool. I'm a bit of a nerd. But what you do is when you put people in these boxes, this is a stereotype, you lose out on so much value and so much learning. What you do, if you use stereotypes as a springboard, you say, right, what I can guess from the stereotype of Matt is he's a creative person. So I can go and test if he is really creative. What I can go guess about a person that is corporate is that she might have been in a boardroom or two. Let me go and test that. You might see someone really creative, covered in ink, walking on the street with a corporate business suit on. If you go, oh, you corporate, I'm not going to discuss creative. You don't know where they were. They might have been at a funeral. They might have been at an interview session. They might have been anywhere. You don't know. But what we do is stereotype, judgment, poof, there you go. And we don't go and learn. So we miss out on so much.
Mm-hmm. That's actually very true. Eh? It's very sad. Heretics.
Very.
It's not a good place. Always, that goes back to your point going earlier in the show where you said question everything.
Yes.
Goes back to
question yourself. Start with questioning yourself. You know, why am I making this stereotype and how am I using? Because there's a place, there's a time and a place for it, right? We need it. It's to aid communication. You and me both being in corporate communication. That's the fastest way you can get somewhere. So if you do stakeholder engagement and stakeholder mapping, it's almost, you know, what are my stakeholder groups? How do I communicate with them? What do I assume to start the communication? As long as you use it as a start, brilliant. Never use it as the end.
Love that. For me, the best way to prepare yourself for the future is just to ask better questions. Boom! Okay, cool. Let's swing the bats.
Yes.
Okay. There's a couple bats here. Pick one of your choosing. You may stand for this grandstanding exhibition of bat
I should
swinging.
have a disclaimer that when I hit with my hands, I'm really accurate, but put something in my hands like a bat, it's
Whoa, okay.
wow.
I'm going to get out of the way then.
There you go. So brief me very, very properly, and then let's see if I can actually get it done.
Health and safety. Just go straight down like that.
Why?
Like this. Boom.
Why?
Why? Because there's cameras and stuff.
No,
Also,
why?
It's better for the effect.
What's in the box? What am I hitting? Why am I hitting
Sweets,
it?
lots of
Am I
sweets.
hitting the injustice? Am I
Yes,
breaking
you're
the
hitting
injustice?
the stereotype of injustice.
So this is stereotype on the box isn't.
It's adult therapy for fun people.
But I'm not an angry person. Let me hit this thing.
Just do it. It's okay, go. Boom! Yeah, woo! Well done. Good job.
Stereotypes be gone.
Death to all stereotypes.
Death and metal.
Cool. Just a couple more questions then. So, like, I mean, what are you speaking about now? So, if disruptology is, you know, never ending or what have you, I know that was kind of where you started. What are you speaking about now?
Anything that the clients want me to, as long as it's something I actually know. You know, no lies. I'll fake the courage. I will never fake the knowledge. It tends to differ from where people enter into space where they don't know quite what to do next. I like to help people or I like to make the unexpected a little bit more expected. So the other day I was doing something about the future of corporate real estate, and how do you change your teams? And on Monday, actually, I'm flying down to Cape Town doing something about Generation Z. And I told them you shouldn't be talking about Gen Z, you should be talking about Gen Alpha, but that's a different conversation. So anything to do with kind of reaching into the future and bringing it into the now and making it a little bit easier to deal with.
Cool, I love that. Why do you do what you do? What gets you out of bed in the morning?
Opportunity. The what gets me out of bed in the morning? The alarm clock and the kids that have to go to school and routine.
It's a good motivator.
What makes me really excited, if we can reframe that, what makes me really excited is unexplored opportunities, is the what if. What if we did this? What if we gave it one more try? What if we do it differently? What if I show up and this one interaction is the one? What if I meet someone new and it just opens up so much? What if? I think what if drives everything. I'm just curious by nature.
Cool. Love that. Thank you for being on the Map Round Show. Juanita, you've been
Thank you so
legend.
much.
Thank you.
Thank
you
you so
very much. Round of
Thanks,
applause.
guys. Thank you.